What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. Welcome back to For Amusement Only. We've got Jeffrey Lawton.
Hello.
And Robert Medl.
Hello.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Fine.
Well, I'm out visiting with them in Ohio, and we're here at Jeffrey's. And Jeffrey was kind enough to have us over, and we're going to play some bingos. But first, I wanted to talk some bingos. So,
All right.
Jeffrey, where we left off with our last interview, we were talking about how Bally had kind of become a victim of their own success. They were making changes so rapidly that they were having problems, it seems like, keeping up with documentation, and there were other issues in units that they were producing.
That's right.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, the single biggest issue was when they changed the timer circuit. Carnival Queen was the last game that had what's called a 40-step timer circuit. And that means that the timing unit actually had to step 40 times before it would tilt the game. And the Laguna Beach, which followed Carnival Queen, further on down the line. I can't speak about Ballerina and Sun Valley because I'm not sure about those two. But Laguna Beach, which was the first OK game, they went to an 8-step timer circuit. And the reasoning, I guess, was to try to save the motors, because that would shut the motors off after 8 steps. I don't actually know that that's the reason. That's just an assumption. The problem that caused was that if you were playing a Laguna Beach or any one of the later bingo games beyond that, all the way through Bounty, and you had the pleasure of winning a large hit, 300 games, in some cases 200 games, but 450 games, 600 games, you were in danger of the machine actually stopping in the middle of the payout. And those who listen to this podcast, there's probably hundreds of you are saying, boy, I know that. But what would happen is your game would be happily talking off replays, and then all of a sudden it would just stop.
So if I'm a player, Jeffrey,
yes, and
I'm on location, what's my recourse?
You have to hit the R button real fast because that resets the timer.
And so before it times out, I have to hit the R button?
Yes.
Or right after it times out.
Or right after it times out, okay.
Now, an obvious conclusion is to say, well, why would they allow the payout circuit to continue to work if the timer is going to be allowed to continue to work too? The answer to that is the timer circuit isn't allowed to continue to work. Except when the replay cams index, which is what's counting your replays, goes from the 12th position through index back to position 1. If you're in positions 1 through 12, the timer cannot step. It's only for that minimal 1 or 2 second gap between the 12th step and the first step of the next cycle that the timer can step. Now, people that have bingo in their blood, like I do, when you're racking a game up, you can actually hear the timer step in the middle of the rack. And you mutter an obscenity and you go over and you hit the reset, the register button to reset the timer. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I'm stating facts that a lot of people may not know. Number 1, the games with the reset, with the 8-step timer, did not tilt like Carnival Queen did.
Yeah.
They just shut the machine off, but the machine's available to play.
Right.
And the player can go up, and by hitting the R button, that will force a reset of the timer unit, and the game will play. Now, knowing that, an experienced player will be savvy to the sounds and say, okay, when I'm racking a big hit, I've got to stay with the game. But I've had so many customers and friends who have owned bingo games call me and say, you know, I was racking up a big game. My wife called me. I went upstairs. I came downstairs. the machine is not running, it's making a horrible noise, and I smell something that doesn't smell good.
Oh boy.
And many times it's too late
Yeah.
because either the search lock coil is burned up or one of the step-up coils on either the replay counter or the replay unit itself may very well be burned up. In really, really bad cases, the machine will actually catch on fire.
Yeah.
Right, and I think I actually read about this on Phil's site.
Yes.
He talked about the problem, and he put a couple solutions up,
Yep.
one of which is yours,
was
Jeffrey,
his.
and it was from someone else, I don't recall.
Yeah.
But I'll back up real quick, just
Yeah.
because I have a Circus Queen, Carnival Queen. So you're saying when we go to fix that one, I have to keep in mind that if the timer does step all the way up, it will tilt, and it's not available to play.
That's correct.
So if I'm playing and I'm thinking for a long time, I want to hit a button.
Well, the difference between that and the others is, does Carnival Queen have the 8-step?
No.
Yeah, it's got the 40-step.
Oh, okay.
So you got minutes
Okay.
to think about.
All right.
Well, you make a good point with Carnival Queen and older games. Carnival Queen, Beach Time, Sun Valley, going back down the line.
Yeah.
The game will tilt after the timer reaches 40 steps. Now, if you're playing your game and you want to go for extra balls, but for some reason you have to leave the game, there's a possibility that when you come down, the game may be tilted.
Right.
So it's important to know that. That's probably the reason why they went away from that, so that the game wouldn't actually tilt, and
Yeah, you could come back to it.
and operators wouldn't have to deal with irate customers who
Yeah,
said,
right.
"No, I want my game
I went
set."
to buy a bag of
right.
nickels, and
Yeah.
I came back, and it was
Yeah.
tilted. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but that said, in fixing one problem, they caused another problem. So I mean, that's the most significant glaring error. And I don't think that the engineers even gave a thought to the fact that there was a possibility that while that replay Keynes index is moving from position 12 back to 0 to position 1, that small amount of seconds, it's possible for the two switches that have to close to actually close and allow the time unit to step. But I'm here to tell you it is possible, and it does happen. And I've had to repair an awful lot of games that had burn up units and burn up coils and burn up lots of things because of this issue.
And I've talked previously about my experience with that, actually burning up Steve's game, which was pretty great.
I bet that went over real well.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking in the car yesterday about feedback, and this is a neat example where, in today's age of manufacturers putting out products, they can get feedback directly from customers on Facebook or on Twitter or whatnot. Now, you think back 50 years ago, what was the feedback mechanism from the player to the operator to the distributor to the manufacturer? And apparently, this isn't one thing that got through that chain, or else you think they would have addressed it.
I have to assume that no feedback path existed. I mean, I have to assume that. I can tell you from personal experience, when I was in the field working at my father's restaurant, when we had a player who had a problem with the game where it took a premature tilt, the player screamed and hollered, and we would call the repairman, and the repairman would come out, and he would say what seems to be the problem and explain it, and the repairman would do his best to give the player some sort of a free game to make up for whatever they lost. Now, a second example, which was innovative technology again, on games like, I'm going to say Showtime, but they were older games at Showtime. They had a feature with the coins where if the coin went on the coin switch, but didn't come off the coin switch, the game was hung. The start relay was energized, but the game was hung. It would not do anything. And the player would drop more nickels in, and they would clog up in the coin chute, and eventually the repairman would have to call. But nothing ever burned up. Later on, in games like, again, Laguna Beach, that was, again, is the first one I can think of. And I'm not saying that Sun Valley and Ballerina didn't have this, but Laguna Beach definitely did. They changed that circuit to where if the coin switch was down and the timer cam started to move, and for those of you who understand bingos, when the game starts, the shutter will reset, then the timer cam starts to move. As the timer cam starts to move, it cycles through and gives you your odds, features, whatever you're going to get, and takes your free play off or steps your reflex or whatever it's going to do in preparation for the next coin.
Right.
Games from Laguna Beach on out had a switch on cam 4 of the timer cam's index where when it started to move, it would move about, I'm going to say, 15% into the full 90 degrees or 180 degree cycle.
Rotation, right.
That switch on cam 4 would close. That coin switch is still down when that cam on switch 4 closes. The game tilts.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, you would say, what's the reason for that? Well, they still had a problem with guys drilling holes or slip wiring or whatever they were doing,
Mm-hmm.
that they would make the coin switch operate.
Yeah.
And it was almost impossible, if you're doing the coin switch illegally, it's almost impossible to get off of that before the game tilts.
Right.
So it's a good safety feature. Now here's the rub. You're in a high volume location.
Mm-hmm.
The coin box on a standard bingo at nickel a play holds about $80 to $90 worth of nickels before it fills up. Now, the newer machines, like I'm talking about, have what's called, I call it a ski slope. The coin comes down, goes over the ski slope, hits the switch, and goes off
Shoots out.
into the
Box.
Yeah. Until the box gets so full that there's no place for the coins to go.
Okay.
So now, again, you're in a
Backs up
high
on
volume
the switch.
location.
Yeah.
Man's dropping nickels in. All of a sudden, he drops a nickel in. The game tilts. He says, "What's wrong? I'm not doing anything wrong. The
Yeah.
game tilted." You got to call the repairman. The repairman comes over. He opens the door. The nickels fall all over the floor. And he says, "Oh, I see what happened. Do you remember what you had on the game?" And the repairman will sit there and he will strum the coin switch until the player gets a game that
An
he says,
equivalent game.
an equivalent game, exactly.
Well, I had all
Reminds-
my odds at 600, obviously.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
obviously. It reminds me of Pong, right? The first time
Yeah.
Pong was put on location,
It's broken.
it's broken.
Yeah.
And they came out, they opened it up, there were so many damn quarters in it, that's why it was broken.
Exactly. Now, in my experience, I don't think I wrote about this in my book, but I had written 2 stories about a man named Pinball George that came into Hamburger Haven.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a time when Pinball George came in, and he's playing his bikini, and he's a high-volume player. Well, my father would call the repairman as soon as George showed up.
Oh my gosh.
And the repairman would come in, and my father would feed the repairman, and they would sit and talk. And they waited patiently until the string of obscenities yelled from where George was playing the machine. And I would go down, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" "Blank, blank, game, blank, blank, blank," tilted. Called Frankie down. "Sorry, sir." He says, "Jeffrey, take the quick cash box and count these nickels out." So I would take, and it took me and 3 small boys to carry the coin box into the office to run the nickels
Wow.
through the counter. And he would be saying to George, "Now, George, tell me when you've got the game that was what you lost." And George would sit there very happily watching Frankie strum the switch until he built up a huge game. But I can tell you from practical experience, that actually happened.
Okay.
And I say, I don't think I wrote about that in my book. Maybe I did. If I did, you guys who have the book can go back and look and say, "Aha, we've got that."
We did hear that.
Yeah.
But now they've heard it straight from your mouth. So I'm kind of curious about a couple things that Bally did with features or design decisions, and I was just hoping you could speculate with me, both of you, on why you think that might be. The first feature that's kind of interesting, and I don't really know why they had it in the first place, was instead of the ski jump, they had the coin kicker.
Okay.
And the coin kicker, of course, would clear the path for the next coin to come down. But why?
As long as it kicked the coin out.
Correct. The fundamental flaw with that design is that if it doesn't kick, then you're in trouble.
And exactly what I was describing. The coin is sitting there. It should have kicked out, but
Yep.
it didn't. Next coin comes in, holds the coin switch down, and nothing happens.
Yeah, just get stuck.
Now, there's a high-tech fix for that.
Mm.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
You bang on the door and knock the coin out of the thing, and the coin falls in the game cycles. As long as you don't bang on it so hard that
Yeah,
you
I was
tilt
going to
it.
say there's tilt switches on there too.
Yeah, but you have to reach that happy
It's
medium.
finesse, right?
When we play my Showtime later, that problem will occur because it does happen from
Oh.
time to time on my Showtime.
Okay.
That exact problem.
Well, very good. And then there are some features that Bally put in, and they only put them in for one game or maybe two. And I'm, kind of curious as to why they might have done that. And I understand that you might not have the answer, but I'm hoping maybe you've got an idea.
Okay.
So something like Magic Pockets. We've talked before, and you mentioned that it was kind of complicated for players. Do you feel like that might be the reason that they stopped making those?
In my experience, I would have to say that was the issue. For the strong player, no, it wasn't an issue. But for the
Average Joe,
Average
occasional
Joe,
player.
Yeah.
who knows bingos, who
Yeah.
knows about features and whatnot,
Yeah.
I had a customer who bought a number of games from me. And he's here, he says, I want to buy one more game. And he's choosing between a Gaiety,
Mm-hmm.
which is Magic Pockets,
Mm-hmm.
a Variety, which is the first game that had 3 moving lines,
Mhm.
and a Beach Club, which is feature-wise very easy to understand. You've got selectable numbers, and that's pretty much it, and
Right.
then 2 little mini cards. And I was sure, because I felt this man was an experienced player, that he was going to go for the Gaiety, because the Gaiety offered you, feature-wise, more bang for the
so
buck.
much. Right.
He bought the Variety. And I said, why would you buy the Variety? It's got everything that the Gaiety's got
Right.
without the Magic Pockets. He said, Jeffrey, I just can't figure out how to move those numbers across the top row along with the numbers I've got and make the best combination. And it's too complicated for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exactly what you said, Nick. It's just too
Too
complicated.
complicated for players.
And this man was an experienced player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Okay.
And there were 2 that were made.
Right.
Gaiety and Gaytime, that Magic Pockets.
And which was first?
Gaiety.
Okay.
So we both have a gay time, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
Although yours is much nicer than mine.
well, that's a fun game.
It is a good
I
one.
really like it. Yacht Club. That's another one where they only made one of these, but it's kind of like the precursor in my mind to, say, a Magic Screen
Mm-hmm.
or something where you're moving the card.
Yacht Club was a precursor to Magic Screen, also a precursor to Miami Beach,
Mhm.
and in some respects a precursor to Twist, which you've already talked about.
Right.
The problem with Yacht Club is operator had to keep the game well maintained because the card that you were playing was delineated by lights.
Right. Okay.
And if the lights weren't lighted,
Weren't working. Yeah.
you as a player had no
No
clue
idea.
where you were.
Oh gosh. Okay.
And a man would be sitting there. There are no lines on a Yacht Club card. So a man sits there and he says, well, all right, I'm in card number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I've got a 4-number diagonal. Well, I got a winner. No, you don't have a winner. Because you have to read the scorecard that says on the Yacht Club, diagonals only pay in 5-number lines from corner to corner. There's no line on the card
Mhm.
to show you that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So as a player, you're thinking, well, I got a winner, and you haven't got a winner,
Wow.
and now you're mad.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
bet. Okay, well that answers that. Now, what about like Miami Beach with the Magic Curtains?
The big problem with Miami Beach, the numbers were so different compared to what the average player was used to.
Uh-huh.
And you start with Miami Beach. Miami Beach had a neat feature. Put your first nickel in, has a green panel. The green panel says 3 in line, green scores 5 in line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you look at the card, you have to look at it real closely. There's yellow lines, there's red lines, and there's white lines, which are nondescript,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 2 green lines. From the far right, going from the number 1, 2 numbers up diagonally,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 numbers down diagonally,
Right.
because this is the initial card.
Yep.
So a player says, okay, I can still make a green 3 in line
Right.
without having the curtains lit.
Yeah.
Now, when you play Miami Beach, you get your curtains lit. It opens up. It gives you 2 additional lines. Now you've got the whole green X.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a normal green X like you have on any bingo game.
Right.
The yellow and red lines, those you have 3 scores 4. I have a panel for 3 scores 4. They're not necessarily lit, but they can be lit if you feed it enough.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem with Miami Beach, they recognized because of the way they laid the numbers out, it was too easy to make 5 in a row. Your Miami Beach, if you think about your initial odds, are 4, 16, 60.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think maybe it's not even 16. Then it's 6, 20, 60. Then 8, 24, 72 or something like that. The odds don't really start to get what I would call equivalent till you get to 18, 48, 150, which is pretty far up.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about Miami Beach, and I did write about this in my book, you could have a line. There was a red line and a yellow line. The Miami Beach would spot 19, 20, 21, 22 if you got the dial lit. And if you had 2 curtains, 19 appeared twice in the same line.
Mm-hmm.
22 appeared twice in the same line. If you had 3 curtains lit, 19 and 20 appeared twice in the same line.
Wow.
21 and 22 appeared twice in the same line. You could conceivably make 5 in a row on Miami Beach with 2 numbers.
That's impressive.
With the right break. Well, I say 2 numbers outside the selection, and then you have to hit one of the selectable numbers. But when you hit it, you get the 21. You get 2 spots in the 21.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't remember the numbers that are around
the combination, right?
But I can tell you, as a youngster, and I wrote about this in the book. We had a group of fellas that played. I call them fellas. We were all kids, and I was pretty good at making the 8 and the 19.
Mm-hmm.
We had another couple of players who were really good at making the 17 and the 21. We had another player who was real good at making the 14 and the 19.
Wow.
So depending on what we needed, that's the man that went up to the machine. And, 6 times out of 9,
it generally
he made his
out,
number,
right?
and we got our 5 in a row.
Mm-hmm. Now, what machine, you were saying this machine had an atypical layout of the numbers. At what machine did they kind of establish the traditional, here's your 25 numbers, they're in this order, and they're not, so like my Palm Springs has a different layout of the main card than all my other games.
That's true.
So at what point did they kind of,
Broadway,
16 in the middle kind of thing,
to my knowledge, and I could be wrong about this, it may go back as early as Variety. I don't know if Variety, Big Time, Gaiety, and Gay Time have the same number sequence. I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be easy enough to research, but I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that Broadway, Nightclub, Parade, Key West all have the same 25 number base.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Showtime, Cypress Gardens, Beach Time, Sun Valley, Carnival Queen, Laguna Beach, and every Magic Screen all the way through Bounty all have the same 25 number layout.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, certainly all the Magic Screen games have the same 25, yeah.
Showtime was the first one that went to that 9, 1, 2, 11, 15 on the top, and 1, 19, 23, 24, 8 on the vertical going down.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 number combinations alone, from that point on, anybody who played a bingo machine, those 2 number combinations were that they didn't play it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the end. That was the end of the line. Bally said, "Okay, this is what you want. This is what you got.
That's what you get."
And Twist was the only one that deviated from that.
Right. So
even Acapulco and Touchdown used that same pattern.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
So that brings us. We played some of Robert's great bingos last night, and lots of games that I hadn't played before. And Touchdown is probably one of the hardest games.
Well, but it's funny because I was saying going into it that we had to put a hack in place to make it operate properly because there was a problem with it. It would just spin and spin and spin and spin and spin. It would never award you a feature or a score jump or anything. It would just spin and spin and spin. So we put a hack in place to make sure that it always got power to that coil, and then it would always give you something. And it had been my experience that it made it very generous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very, very liberal, almost to the point where you couldn't lose.
Right.
Now
we found a way, though.
We found a way. That's right. So we were playing at you can only put in 8 credits and that's it. No extra balls, and we weren't able to get anything on it. So we had to revise the rules, and apparently it's not as liberal as I thought it was. But what did you think of the touchdown, Nick?
I thought the magic numbers feature was really cool. I like watching the numbers move around. The animation's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
The artwork is beautiful in person as it is in pictures.
Yeah, if you look at the backlash, though, I don't know what kind of football game they're playing, but there's like 14 red guys and like 8 guys in yellow. So there should have been a flag called for too many men on the field on that backlash.
Also, it's like the most popular football game that's ever existed because the stadium is completely filled.
Yeah.
But yeah, the number combinations are interesting on that, and there's so much green. So many green lines. It's really quite hard. It's a great game, and I really liked it quite a bit, along with every other game.
Yeah, we certainly we played every damn one of them.
Yeah, made the circuit.
That's right.
So Robert, which is your favorite out of all your games?
Well, like I said, if I had to keep one, it would be the Circus Queen. I do have a Golden Gate. But it just seems like that additional complexity is just a little too much with the purple and the purple section in the gate and all that stuff. I'd rather have the possibility for those features to come out to be allocated instead to just the super sections and the OK game and the ABCD and all that stuff. So if I had to keep one, I would keep that one. And then as I was saying in the car, if I had to keep only one of my Magic Square games, I have the Sun Valley, and I have Cypress Gardens, and the Key West, and one other one, I think. But it would be the Cypress Gardens, only because it was the first title I ever owned. And so if I could only have one, that would be the one. So sentimental reasons. And I like to play it, too.
Gotcha.
Even though it doesn't have the F.
I have to agree with you in your analysis of the Magic Squares. I have Key West, Showtime, Sun Valley, Cypress Gardens, and I've had Beach Time. And Beach Time is like a Cadillac Sun Valley. Mm-hmm. But it's a little too much for my taste. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the game. I always liked Sun Valley. Sun Valley was one of the first games I ever encountered as a youngster playing bingo games. And I was very happy to get one in my collection. I like Showtime. Showtime has a lot of pleasant memories. But Cypress Gardens, just like Robert, I have real-life memories of Cypress Gardens. And Cypress Gardens has different backlashes. There's some backlashes on Cypress Gardens where the odds, when they display, look like a football behind the number like most of the Magic screens do. But I had seen Cypress Gardens on location where the odds were displayed as squares.
Really?
Around the numbers. They looked the same, but they displayed as squares.
Huh.
And I've never seen one since, but Bob Borden in Marsville, Pennsylvania, we talked about the Cypress Gardens that used to be in Clinton Bus. Now, if anybody is a New Jersey resident for a long time in the Trenton area, Clinton Bus was a very well-known location down by Pennsylvania Station, and it was a greasy spoon type diner, had a Cypress Gardens on the wall, and you would go in there after a hard night of drinking or working or whatever you were doing, and you would go into Clinton Bus for breakfast, and you'd play Cypress Gardens. Mm-hmm. And that's a very fond memory. And so I now have a Cypress Gardens in my collection, and I'm very pleased to have it.
Mm-hmm. And so it's more the nostalgia and the memories tied to the game. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. For both of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's pretty interesting. Okay.
You will find as you get to know more collectors.
Uh-huh.
I have customers that come to me, and the verbiage is different, but the message is the same. I played this game when I was in college. Mm-hmm. I played this game with my father. Mm-hmm. I sat and watched my father play this game. I've got to have one. Doesn't matter what the features are. Mm-hmm. They've got to have that game.
Okay.
and that's understandable.
Sure. It's just interesting because I've kind of backed into this world,
Yes.
from flippers, which I always played. So I certainly had that kind of yearning early on when I was collecting pinballs, just to get the ones that I played.
Mm-hmm.
But then I discovered this whole world, and it's amazing, and can't back away from it. So now I'm drawn to the ones with the best features and interesting artwork and all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of different, never having had that experience.
Here in Cincinnati, I've found you have two types of players. You have the player who knows the more elaborate games, Magic Screen with OK, Golden Gate with the purple section, or you have the people that are Ohio Dime game players. They want 6 cards, they want to light the 6 cards, and they want to light the numbers. They don't want to burden their brain with figuring out how to make features make the game more enjoyable for them. They want to make the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Really very interesting. And most Ohio Dime game players, when they were offered the opportunity to make the transition to the more modern 6 cards, such as Ticker Type, Blue Chip, different other ones, Dixieland, Nashville, they would walk away and say, it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much. Even though a game like Nashville, you've got all the diagonals pay.
Yeah.
You've got all kinds of, it's a really super neat game. The devoted 6-card player from the Cincinnati area is going to say, 6 cards, yellow line on the 4th line, that's all I want. Then they're happy.
So I was also curious, why United made some really interesting titles, I think. And I've heard from other folks that they just paid too much, and maybe that's why they kind of went out of business. But as far as bingos go, what are your thoughts about that?
I don't know a whole lot about United Games from actual experience, more so from what people have told me.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing my research for the book, it appeared that United was more interested in giving features that didn't always relate to bingo, such as light a name.
Uh-huh.
You ball roll through and you get enough balls through, and as soon as you get the last letter in the name, you're going to get 5 in a row. Period. Doesn't matter what else you make on your game, you're going to get 5 in a row. And then it clears out and you go, okay, that's bingo, but that's more like what a flipper guy would be interested in attaining a feature or building a feature up.
Right.
Another example of that is where you drop in a certain hole so many times and all 8 balls next game.
Right.
Same idea.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing Palm Springs yesterday at Robert's house. Palm Springs had an interesting feature. Palm Springs has what's called a hold feature. Those of you who know Bally games know that the hold feature allows you to either hold your odd number balls or your even number balls at the end of the game. But Palm Springs allowed you the right to go and acquire extra balls before you used the hold feature. I don't think that Ice Frolics or Surf Club allowed you to. Well, I know Surf Club because I have a Surf Club. I don't know about Ice Frolics, but I don't know that those two allowed that. On Surf Club, you can't play for extra balls until you've exhausted the hold feature. So that's an interesting thought. Whereas Palm Springs, you could get 1 extra ball, 2 extra balls, and then exercise your hold feature and have the ability to arrange up to 7 balls over again if necessary, if you choose to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a super powerful feature.
I think so.
Yeah. Robert, what do you think of that feature? Do you like it?
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful feature because you feel like even though you've got 5 balls up there, you can shoot 3 bad ones and you'll get another shot at it. So it's almost like extra balls on demand.
Yeah.
It's so funny. A game like Palm Springs or Ice Capades or Surf Club, you play and you get a winner. And you've got the hold feature lit. but your winner has one odd number and two even numbers, or two odd numbers and one even number. So you lose your hold feature if you want to keep your winner.
Yeah.
And you somehow feel like you were cheated. Hey, you made a winner, but you feel like you were cheated. It's funny.
So, Jeffrey, have you played many United games? Or have you had the opportunity?
No, I played United Hawaii as a young man. I don't remember anything about it. The one thing that I remember about Hawaii was that the playfield holes were beveled differently than the Bally holes were beveled. Mm-hmm. On the Hawaii, you had a deeper circular arc coming into the hole than leaving the hole. Whereas all your Bally games, your holes are beveled circularly all the way around even.
Correct.
So you can get some really interesting rolls on a Bally game. But on a Hawaii, what's going to happen with the United Hawaii, if you catch that bevel, that ball's gone.
Yeah.
There's no getting out of it. That ball's gone. Not all United games had that, but I remember that the Hawaii did. There are probably others that did, and I think I mentioned that in my book, but I mentioned it more because of what maybe Butch Glottis said in his commentary, or that it was visible on the playfield, not because of my own personal experience.
Mm-hmm. I've never even seen one. So
yeah, they're pretty rare. I mean, I have one, and I was lucky to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's quite fun. Of course, I have a Caravan, and Caravan at that time, they just basically switched to all Bally, everything.
Yeah.
Control unit, mixer, even playfield layout, and ball size. Because before that, they were using 1 1/16.
That's right. I forgot about that. They used the smaller balls.
Yeah, and so that would be quite the challenge, I think, because you have the lighter weight balls to try and nudge in. But so returning to our earlier conversation about some kind of theories about games and the features that they had and maybe why they had been removed. A game like Parade with the extra lines, I think that's an incredibly powerful feature just from the reading about it. I've never played one, of course. But what are your thoughts? I mean, why do you think they might have stopped doing that after one?
Well, Parade was the last game where they used the double, triple, quadruple feature. The next game after Parade was Big Show, which was corner squares, but that introduced triple deck scoring.
Okay.
Where you had red, yellow, and green.
Mm-hmm.
On Parade, you had red, yellow, and green. I don't know about green, but I know you had red and yellow. And you had red, double, triple, quadruple, yellow, double, triple, quadruple. They probably didn't have a green. Irregardless, the problem I found with the extra lines, I don't believe that when you got the extra line lit, that the numbers that were in the 5 positions above the A and the B square or below the C and the D squares, that those numbers shared identity with the other numbers that were in C or D.
Okay.
Which tended to make the extra lines somewhat valueless, although it wasn't if you were playing where you had 2 numbers in the A square and you needed a single number. Now all of a sudden, if the extra line's it, now you get to shoot for 2 numbers instead of 1.
Yeah.
So there's the big benefit. That was really the only benefit to the extra lines that I saw.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough.
I'm not real experienced on playing Parade. I do have a customer here in Cincinnati who owns a Parade. I've played it a couple times with him, but never to the point where I really got serious about identifying what is it that makes this game really good or really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you think player response was similar, where they just couldn't make a winner? Is that?
I think what happened with those games, and I'll go all the way back to Broadway. Broadway was a total innovation. Corner squares, single, double, triple. Fantastic innovation.
Mm-hmm.
The flaw, you get before the 4th ball, okay, shoot 3 balls, your squares lock up. You get before the 5th ball, okay, you shoot 4 balls, your squares lock up. But you can't score your winners until your squares are locked.
Right.
Big problem, in my opinion. I wrote about this quite a bit in the book when I talked about Sun Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nightclub came along. Nightclub was the first corner square game that had after the fifth ball,
Mm-hmm.
which you could get in play. You could actually earn the after the fifth ball in play. Now, here's Bally saying, well, we're stuck now because we can't tell the player you can't not collect your replays. So they had to give the player the option of collecting their games while the squares were still on. The players love that. Players who could tell if they or think they perceived that after the fifth was lit would feed that game a lot more to make sure they got the squares lit,
Mm-hmm.
because that after fifth was so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much that you could move the squares, but you could score double hits. So here's a case you're playing Nightclub, a perfect example. You make the 1-2, you make the 1-9-18.
Mm-hmm.
That's a white line hit. That's a single
Yep.
deck hit. Okay, you shoot your fifth ball. You have after the fifth ball, and you make the 25, which is a red line number. You move your A line up. Now you hit your red line. Well, maybe your red line's set for triple or quadruple.
Right.
Okay, so you've scored your single hit. You got that. Now you move it up, and you get to score the same basic 3-in-line hit 2 more times because you got triple in the red.
Right.
Big come on for the player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Key West offered after the fifth ball. The trick with Key West is you can't get after the fifth ball in play. In other words, you can't feed it because there's no feature in the mixer that allows after the fifth to come up as a buyable feature.
Oh, okay.
So you have to get the rollover.
Huh.
Now here's a cute thing with Key
And that,
West.
the rollover on both sides is the same, right?
The rollover on
Right.
both sides is
Yeah,
the same,
yeah.
but only one is lit.
Right. That's right. It toggles left, right,
Toggles
left,
left.
right.
So what would happen is a player's shooting. They say, "Well, darn, I've got the red rollover, but I really wish I had the yellow rollover." So if you don't know about it toggling, you'll play the game with the red rollover lit, wishing you had the yellow. The player who knows, he'll just push off another game, even if he doesn't want to, or put another coin in the game, move it to the yellow. Now he can hit the yellow rollover.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, bingo law says if you do that, you will make the red rollover.
absolutely.
Right.
But that, that's aside. That's aside from it.
And this was the first time I had played Key West with that alternating feature.
Right.
I had never previously played one, I don't think. But there are a few that they made that had that alternating feature, correct?
I can't remember.
I believe so.
I can't remember.
Well-
Carnival Queen has rollovers, but both rollovers are lit on Carnival Queen.
Miss America.
Miss America, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yes, that is right. Miss America has an alternating rollover feature, and Miss America, I believe, only allows you to get before the fifth ball, not
Correct.
after.
Correct.
Which is the same problem with Carnival Queen. Carnival Queen only allowed you before the fifth ball. Although there was a reason for Carnival Queen. The operators and the distributors were afraid with the magic screen, being able to move the magic screen. If you could make 5 in a row vertical with the magic screen after the fifth, you got 5 in a row in all 3 colors.
Yes, you did.
They found as time went on, worrying about that for most players was a non-worry.
Nick.
I got
I've
one.
been playing bingo games for a lot of years. I've never made a vertical 5 in a row with after the fifth ball lit. I've made vertical 5 in rows, but never with after the fifth ball lit.
Made a vertical 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Many
pretty
times,
proud of that.
yes.
Pretty proud of that. But yeah, not a 5. So, it's something to shoot for.
yes.
So,
Keep dreaming.
got to dream big.
That's right.
So, we were talking earlier about hi-fi,
Yes.
and you wanted to set the record straight.
Yes. I listened to your podcast about hi-fi, and I had a hi-fi in here that I restored for a man. I had 2 of my friends play it, plus I played it. The trick with hi-fi, you have got to have the coil assemblies that control the playfield clean and unencumbered. There cannot be any debris or anything in there. You got to make sure that both 110 volt coils are firing. Just because the coil's there doesn't necessarily mean it's firing. You've got to be sure that it's firing. if both those 110-volt coils are firing, when you hit those green buttons, that play field will move probably at least 2 inches from where it is to where it's going before it returns back.
Wow.
You can get, if you can time it right, you can get a shot off those pins where you can go from the pin above, let's say 21, 20, 22, all the way back up over 7, if your timing is right and you have the good fortune to aim it so that the ball doesn't bang around the other pegs.
Well, that's the trick, right? So we're used to playing bingo, and we have it come down from the top.
Yeah.
So if you switch it up and you have it going back up the playfield, that would be pretty tricky, I think.
Oh, it's especially exciting. Can you imagine making the 7 from the 21, 22 peg?
No.
No, and yeah, you can do that on a regular game, but the game's going to display tilt real fast.
Yeah, when you lift the front legs.
Just pretty much. Whereas with that bump feature, the playfield moves. The game does not move. The playfield moves.
Right.
And it's really an amazing feature, but it's awfully, awfully difficult to get that timing down. And I have to say, in defense of those who don't like the feature, even if you've got the timing down, you tend to make more bad shots than good. But boy, when you make that good shot, that's a moment.
Feel like an expert, huh?
Oh, yeah, you feel like an expert. And it's just like a good pool player. Somebody who plays pool who can make a really good massé shot where it goes over top of the other ball. That's a brilliant shot. Could I do it? Not today. But two experienced players, the owner of the game and my friend Dave, they both said, I'm not interested in this bump feature, and I like to jock the machine, and I like to play it. Now, the flaw to that is the playfield's spring-loaded.
Right.
It's floating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you jock the machine, but the playfield doesn't respond like
the way that it
like
normally
a solid one does. So,
Oh.
you win, but you lose, and you lose, but you win.
So, do you think that's why they didn't repeat that feature?
I think because players were not able to get a feeling of control that the pinball jocker has.
Right.
Especially people that are flipper pinball players. They pride themselves on being able to time their flips, to being able to provide themselves on how hard they push the machine to change the roll of the ball to bring it down. Bingo players are the same way. You need to make a shot. If you're shooting for a bingo, you need to make a shot. If you hit the ball, we did it last night. If you hit the ball too hard, it's going up for the 10 hole, but if you hit it too hard, it hits the 10. It was a perfect shot, but you hit it too hard, so it swings it rather than falling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the flaw to the hi-fi is you always hit it too hard.
Okay.
Because the bump says wham.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wham. It's like hitting it with a baseball bat. Yeah. There's no feathering the bump feature.
So it goes flying.
It goes flying.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Now, Robert, does that sound like something that you'd like to try?
I might try it, but again, I think part of what I like about bingo is that it doesn't have that element to it, right? It's the only way to maneuver the ball is through maneuvering
Your
the
physical
machine
control.
yourself.
Right.
If I want balls to start flying up the playfield, I'll play a flipper game, with flippers.
Now, last night, Jeffrey was the only one who made a 5 in a line.
That's true, but I also will point out that I had a higher scoring win than his 5 in line. But anyway, that being said...
No dispute.
That being said...
Not to take away from the achievement. So that was on Key West, right?
No,
that was on
Palm
Variety.
Springs. It was on Palm Springs, wasn't it? No, Variety.
It was Variety because you also made
very first game. Yeah.
Because we were saying go for the supercard, and you stopped with 3 of the 4 arrows lit. You shot the game. You had 25 spotted.
Yes.
And in the supercard, you made a full X.
That's right.
And you took a picture of it.
That's right.
So it's on your
because
phone.
I didn't go for it.
So there is a 5 in line with an X on the supercard 1 where he got nothing because he didn't have supercard 1 then.
Because I didn't go for it. You're right.
So he forgave 100 credits, or 200 credits, because on the Variety, Super cards that are lit, corners always pay $200.
Yep, and I didn't go for it.
Nope.
Yep.
But you got 100 replays.
Well, I was happy to do that.
96, but I'm not sure. It might have been.
It was 100. Yeah, it was 100.
Yeah.
It was 8 odds. It was 100.
All right.
So, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was kind of our approach last night, because I thought that was unique and really interesting from the way that I typically play bingos. So, Robert, can you describe?
Well, typically with two people,
Yeah.
you know, like when Jeffrey and I play, we'll pick out a machine and we'll get a bucket of money and, you know, we'll play from the same pile, but you'll stay on that machine until you get bored with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, you know, we won 400 or we lost 200. You want to get 200 more? You want to move to the mission? Whatever. And so last night we had 3 people, and it was the first time for me playing with 3 people. So I wasn't quite sure how to approach it. I think we're going to do something different tonight. But last night, because Nick, you hadn't seen the machines, and because Jeffrey and I had fun doing it last time, is we played around the world. So we started from the oldest machine, and we decided that as a team we have 100 credits, and you can only play 100 credits. And as a good team member, you don't blow 40 on a game unless you think it's worth it. So,
Right.
you know, you say, I'm gonna play for 8 or 12, and we would coach each other too about, oh, you know, put another nickel in, or oh, you probably want to play that. So we had a fixed limit of 100 credits on each game, and we recorded on paper how many we won, and then you know, we played 10 games at 100 each, so we put in 1,000 credits across the different games, and I think we wound up at 800 or something on the 1,000. But yeah, it was a fun way to get you to be able to play all the games.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was a fun way for all of us to play together, but also to have some kind of additional goals. It's like, all right, you only get 100.
Yeah.
And so the interesting part is kind of at the end. So once you get within 15 coins of 100, do you decide to blow them on the game that you currently have, or do you leave them for the next guy?
Mm-hmm.
And so that came up, you know, every time. And yeah, I thought it was a fun way to play the games.
I loved it.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
Yeah.
It did.
And the added kind of stress of trying to figure out, you know, should I go for extra ball or not? You know,
Mm-hmm.
checking with the teammates, seeing. I thought that worked very well.
It's also a good way to exercise your bingos if you happen to have many machines. And,
Yeah.
You know, you might say to yourself, okay, I'm going to go around the world on mine today, and I'm going to set myself a limit of 50 or 100 or however much time you have, just to make sure that you know, exercise all your games and make sure they're
functioning.
They're not ignored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was great, and I really want to thank both of you for having me out here playing all your games.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeffrey, I'm sure we're about
Our
to get
pleasure.
started here. Yeah.
Our pleasure.
So, all right. Well, I'll talk to you all soon. I want to thank Jeffrey and Robert for coming on the show and for allowing me to come out and play their beautiful collections. I had such a great time out there, and I can't wait to talk more about it. There's so much to talk about these games that I was previously speculating about. I was right about a lot of things, but I have more to say about some others. So look forward to hearing some of that here in the not too distant future. But for tonight, that's all. Thank you very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.